For this video, we're going to look at section 1.03 of the whole numbers topic in Mathspace. And this section is looking at an idea of checking the reasonableness of an answer. Checking reasonableness basically involves rounding off our numbers so that we can use those simplified equations to get an approximate answer for a question, and also we can use that approximate answer to tell whether or not the answer we have currently got seems to be correct. So we have a look at the lesson provided. I'm not going to read through this in detail. You can of course do this yourself, but it basically talks about this concept. So while finding an exact answer of course is the overall idea to get an answer for a question, sometimes we don't need to do that. Sometimes we just need to be close enough. Sometimes we need to have an idea of the answer, and this can be a really useful skill, especially if you're doing a question that might be multiple choice. So if you can quickly determine some answers are not possible because they're way too different or something like that, then you might sometimes be able to find which of the multiple choice questions is correct by eliminating the others that can't possibly be the case. So we will have a look at some of the sample questions towards the bottom. Again, you can read through this in a bit more detail. Before we get down there though, this careful box is quite useful. It's basically just reminding you that the more that you round a number before using it, the less accurate your guess will be. So like it says here, if you round 6 and 6 to the nearest 10, it's going to give you an answer of 100, which is not a bad estimate of the final answer of 36. But if you would say round 6 and 6 to the nearest 100, you're obviously going to get a much different answer, and again you're not going to be as accurate. So how and what you round off to is part of the skill here. Do you round up or down? Do you round to the nearest 10, 100, etc., so that you get a more reasonable answer? So let's scroll down and we'll have a look at the practice questions that it's trying to show us here. So I'm going to go into the try this problem to demonstrate, and the reason I'm doing that is I'm going to try and use the drawing sketch pad so I can draw the working out on the screen here for you. Unfortunately for this video at least, I'm using my mouse, so my drawing will not be brilliant. I hope to have a better solution in the near future. So let's have a look at the question first. It says, is this a reasonable statement that 59 minus 37 is close to 20? Okay, so of course we can solve this. So 59 minus 37 is going to be 22. So we can very easily solve that by using normal subtraction methods. So we know that in fact, yes, it is going to be close to 20, but let's do it by rounding off these numbers. So we have 59 and 37. Generally we try to round to something that's very easy for us to calculate, and probably one of the easiest things to calculate is rounding to tens, because tens are nice and easy to add, subtract, divide, all those sorts of things. You might decide to round to a 5 if you are really confident with your 5 times tables and so forth, but you know, we're going to round to the nearest tens here. Okay, so let's get our sketch pad and have a look at how that works. So first of all, we have to remember how to round numbers properly. So I've got the number 59, and what I want to do is round to the tens column. So what I'm going to do is talk about where it breaks. So if I'm rounding to the 5, which is in the tens column, I'm going to be looking at the 9 to decide how it rounds. Okay, so I'm looking at the number to the right hand side of the number I'm rounding to, or the place value I'm rounding to. I sometimes also like to put a dividing line here to make it clear that this is the split. You don't have to do this, but I would ask you at least indicate what value you're using to round off. Now what we should remember is if we have the numbers 0 through to 4, okay, then they round up. Okay, so if you, sorry, I'm getting that wrong, and as I taught you in class, we just cross things out if we make a mistake. We round down, sorry. Again, I apologize for my writing. If we have the numbers 5 through to 9, that's where we round up. Okay, so the numbers 0 to 4 mean that we round the number down, and if we have the numbers 5 to 9, we're going to be rounding up. So here we have 5, and the number that we're rounding by is the 9 in the ones column here. So 9, of course, means we round up. So we're going to take this 5 to be one number up. So this is going to be approximately and we can use this squiggly line, squiggly equals, it's going to be approximately 60. Alright, so everything to the right hand side of this line, this cut that we've made, will end up being zeros, but the number to the left hand side of it will go up one number because we're rounding up. So 59 rounded to the nearest 10 will round up to 60. If we look at 37 as our other number, same thing, we're going to round off by cutting it here because we're cutting at the tens, and we're going to use the 7 as the number that decides how we round. Again, it is a number from 5 to 9, so it's going to round up, so that's going to be approximately equal to 40. Okay, so now that we've rounded our numbers, our actual equation, if we put those numbers back in, has now become 60 minus 40. Because they're nice, round, easy tens, they're super easy to do. So we can say 60 minus 40 is equal to 20. That's super easy to do just in our heads even. And we can go back to the original question that says, is 59 minus 37 close to 20? Alright, well, by rounding off to the tens and doing that equation, we've got an answer of 20. So yes, we are going to say, based on this approximate equation, that the answer is close to 20. So if I turn off my sketch pad for a moment, I'll say yes, it is in fact close to 20. Let's try submitting that. And yes, we are correct. Okay. Let's have a look at the second question here. Again, we'll try this problem. So in a similar way, is 4 times 86 will be less than 320. So we want to approximate 4 times 86 to see if it's going to be less than the value 320 to see if this is true. So let's again start by first of all rounding off our numbers. So we'll round again to the nearest 10. So 4, if we round that to the nearest 10, now normally our rule, this is where it's a little bit tricky right now, okay, our normal rule would say round this up to the nearest 10, or sorry, down to 0, but we don't want to go to 0, obviously, okay, so let's leave this 4, let's just leave the 4 alone for it because it's a single digit. Let's have a look at the 86. Alright, if we've got 86 and we want to round that off, so again we're going to put our cut here and we're going to indicate it by looking at the 6. And so 86 rounded, the 6 is again from 5 to 9, so it's going to round up, so that's going to be approximately equal to 90. Okay, so at the moment we've got an equation, if we leave the 4 alone, I'll explain a bit more about that in a second, multiplied by 90. Okay, now the reason I've left the 4 alone is that's an easy number to use, okay, and we've got this as a tens number now, so we know that we can work with tens numbers quite easily. So to work this one out, again, I'm just going to do 4 times 9, which is a simple equation because we know our times table, so that's going to be 36, and because our 90 is also a tens number, we can just take that 0 and add it into the equation here. If I was to change this and round it down, of course 0 times 90 will be 0, so that's not going to be a very good equation. I might round that up to the 5, for example, which would end up giving me an answer of 450, okay? But here we have a pretty accurate response because that 4 we can leave, and we've got an answer of 360. So the original question here said to us, will 4 times 86 be less than 320? Now we're probably saying no because we've got an answer of 360 here. Yes, we've technically rounded up a little bit, but not by a huge amount. So I would say in this case, no, I do not believe that 4 times 86 will be less than 320. Let's see if we have that correct. And of course we do. Well done to us. Let's close that and have a look at the last one. Okay, so here's our last one. Let's have a look at that question as well. So here it says, consider the product. Now, product, if you can't remember, means multiplication. So product is numbers that are going to be multiplied together. So consider the product of 49 multiplied by 83. So we can see it is a multiplication. Now select all of these reasonable statements. So let's work out an approximation of this. So turning on our sketch pad, 49, okay, if we round that off, so we're going to cut it here to the nearest 10, let's say, and use the 9 to find out. So that's going to be approximately, just do it on the side here for a bit more space, that's going to be approximately 50. So 9 rounds up, so that becomes 50. 83, in a similar way, let's cut it, and we're going to round it based on the ones, because we're rounding up to the 10s, or sorry, we're rounding to the 10s, I should say. So 3 actually means we round down because it's between 0 and 4. So that's going to round down to be approximately just 80. Okay, so we've now got an equation over here of 50 multiplied by 80. And again, 5 times 8 we can do easily, which is 40, just from our normal times tables. And both of these numbers were multiples of 10, so we can take that 0 and add it down here. We can add that 0 and add it down here as well. So we have an answer here of our approximate equation of 4,000. So we're going to say that we think 49 times 83 is going to be approximately 4,000 based on our rounding that we've done. So using that, let's see which of these questions is reasonable. So is it reasonable that the product is more than 4,500? Well, no. We've got an answer here of 4,000, and technically we've rounded these numbers pretty closely, so I do not believe that it's reasonable to say it's going to be more than 4,500. Is the product less than 4,500? Well, again, based on what I've got here, I believe, sorry, turn that one off, I believe that is a reasonable statement. So the first one was not reasonable, so we don't tick it, and I believe the second one here is reasonable. Do we think that the product is less than 3,200? I do not believe so. We've got a product here of approximately 4,000, we believe, so I do not believe that to be correct or a reasonable assumption. And the last one, the product is more than 3,200. So yes, I think that would also be reasonable based on what I've calculated. So let's submit those answers, and we got them right. So let's go back. So that is what this particular topic is all about. First of all, rounding off numbers to something that makes sense and is easier for you to calculate. Try not to round them too high or too low. The more closely to the original numbers you can get, the more accurate your estimate will be. Once you've rounded, do the appropriate math, which is usually then a lot simpler. That's the reason we're doing this. And then using that answer, you can make some reasonable decisions about what the real answer would be. Would it be high or low? Would it be approximately the number you've got, and so forth. So from here, you need to obviously go off and do the questions that have been assigned for you. If you're having trouble, remember, come back to this video. You can come back to obviously the workbook here on Mathspace, and of course, if appropriate and available, you can ask me or your teacher in the classroom for some assistance as well.